Hey everyone, I'm back again. I'm really loving Galatians chapter 2. Galatians chapter 2 has so much in it. It's really beneficial, I think, for everybody to read because it puts a lot of things in perspective in day-to-day life. It's very relevant to our time right now. Just to get started in Galatians chapter 2, Paul has to confront Peter. Now, Paul does this with love, but also with importance. Peter was hanging out with the Gentiles, and the Gentiles were considered lower than the uncircumcised, the sinners, but he was loving them, and he was showing them Christ's love. But when the Jews, who were, say, the keepers of the law, the circumcised, when they came along, Peter pulled away from the Gentiles, and sadly enough, others joined him. It says in verse 13, I'll grab that right here. The other Jews joined him in his hypocrisy, so that by their hypocrisy even Barnabas was led astray. Now in 1 Corinthians 10, verse 22, it says, "Do not cause any man to stumble, whether Jews, Gentiles, or the people of the church." Peter pulled away because he didn't want to be looked at negatively by the Jews that were coming over. Let's did a few things. First, I'm sure the Gentiles felt like garbage being treated this way. They were considered lower than by the Jews, the circumcised, because they were uncircumcised. And when a Jew came along and treated them with love and acceptance and shared the gospel of Christ with them, I bet you that felt awesome. Let me put this in an example that you might be able to better understand or even relate to. Say someone from the church, someone maybe not the head pastor, but someone well involved in the church. They come over and talk to crackheads. They come over and talk to prostitutes, gutter punks, gangsters, or even people new to the church that just don't physically quite fit the norm. That person that would hang out with them, show them the love that God calls them to show. And, I bet you it feels amazing, to get that acceptance that you're not used to. But then let's say a group of pastors was coming by, and that person now shunned all the people that they were talking to. He didn't want to look bad and hang out with bad sinner people. Well, let's get something out in the open right now. And this might sting a little, so maybe you got to sit down, maybe you got to, hold on to something, bite on a belt, but we are all sinners. Nobody on this earth right now can say that they have never sinned. We are all sinners. I don't care if you wear a suit and tie. I don't care if you have on nice clothes. I don't care if you're homeless. I don't care if you're punk, goth, emo, gangster. It doesn't matter. We are all sinners. Nobody here can say they're not. And if you do, you just lied, and that's a sin. So, there we go. Secondly, what the situation did was cause another brother to stumble. Barnabas was following Peter's lead. Now, Barnabas could have stayed doing the right thing. He could have not, stepped out of line the way that Peter did, but he didn't want to be left all by himself, with the sinners. And that's something that, people have a hard time with. They don't want to feel left out of the crowd, and sometimes people will do the wrong thing because somebody else has. But in the same sense, he was following Peter, and Peter stepped out, so he followed. Therefore, Peter led him, into that sin of dropping people off the face. Earlier in this chapter, in verse 6, Paul says, "As for those who seem to be important, whatever they were makes no difference to me. God does not judge by external appearance. Those men added nothing to my message." Then later, there were the fancy pants guys that came later on in the chapter. Those guys were the knowers of the law. They were the ones that were, the smart ones. They not that the Gentiles weren't intelligent, but they had the law memorized and they had it, known. And they were making the law their life's focus. And in a sense, they kind of made the law their God. That was what they looked to. In verse 14, he says that they were not acting in line with the truth of the gospel. And I want to read verse 14 through 16. It says, "When I saw that they were not acting in line with the truth of the gospel, I said to Peter in front of them all, 'You were a Jew, yet you live like a Gentile and not like a Jew. How is it then that you force Gentiles to follow Jewish customs?'" It's like going into a community in a neighborhood and expecting them to do what your community and neighborhood does. "We who are Jews by birth and not Gentile sinners know that a man is not justified by observing the law." not by observing the law, but by faith in Jesus Christ. So we too have put our faith in Christ Jesus, that we may be justified by faith in Christ, and not by observing the law, because by observing the law, no one will be justified. So the law set out to instruct good people to keep doing good. It gives them sort of a blueprint of where to go. It's also set out for people that are struggling, people that maybe aren't doing so good. It gives them, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is how you can be better. So it's a good tool to use for that purpose. But it's not God. The law is not God. It's an instruction manual on how to live a healthy life. And I think it's summed up great in verse 21, which says, I do not set aside the grace of God, for if righteousness could be gained through the law, Christ died for nothing. Let that sink in for a minute. The law is important, but I want to point out that it's God's grace that saved us, not some law. It helps us become better people, but should never replace God. Something to think about. Most people that are seeing this are not Jewish. If it wasn't for the grace and love of God and Him leading people to bring His love to those other than the Jews, where would you be? Next time you see someone that needs God's love, no matter what they look like, where they're from, remember you wouldn't know God the way that you do if someone had not stepped out and shared His love with a bunch of sinners. That's chapter 2 of Galatians. I absolutely love it. I think I've read everything there is into it, so next time I'll find a different one. But I hope you enjoyed it, and if this helped you and you want to pass it on to somebody else, that'd be great. If you know someone that might benefit from hearing this, please let them know. I don't care how many people. I just want them to know the love that God shared with me, and hopefully I can relay that across to you. All right, have a wonderful day.